Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the February 25th Management Committee meeting. I'm John Pacheco and I'll be chairing the meeting today. We usually, on a quarterly basis, we do the Dakota Land, Water, and People Acknowledgement. We had it last week, but we will continue to do it if you missed. And today I'd like to get the approval of the agenda, and I will assume approval if there's no other questions, comments regarding the agenda. Seeing none, we'll move over to the Management Committee minutes. And I need this one I do need a motion and a vote on. So can I get a motion for approval of the February 11th, 2026 Management Committee minutes?
Moved. Second.
Made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We've got a pretty light agenda today, and so we'll move over to our non-consent agenda item. We have business item 2026-53, on-site clinic administration. On the non-consent agenda today, I will invite Michelle Murray, Senior Manager Benefits, to come up and present before the committee. Michelle?
Hello,
Hello.
Chair Pacheco and committee members. My name is Michelle Murray, Senior Manager Benefits. Chair Pacheco and committee members, I am here to present business item 53 for on-site clinic administrative services contract 25P225. This project solicitation is the result of the expiration of our current contract. On-site administrative clinic services include healthcare provider services, administrative oversight, and pass-through expenses such as immunizations or lab fees. Through clarifications and best and final offers, the following enhanced services were negotiated effective July 1st, 2026. Sustainable rate increases with caps for 5 years, a reduction in allowed clinic absent days for providers without credit, performance guarantees, and an enhanced communication focus with a dedicated communication budget. Therefore, we are asking the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute contract 25P225 with Health Partners to provide on-site clinic administrative services in the amount not to exceed $7,261,385.
Any questions? Michelle? Yes, Councilman?
Thank you, Chair. Since the services provided by Health Partners, or if it had been anyone else, are the services provided at the facilities we're also gonna talk about restricted only to Met Council? Or would other Health Partners subscribers be able to procure services there?
Chair Pacheco and committee members, that's a great question. The services that are rendered at the on-site clinics are only for Health Partners participants in our medical plans. So that would include employees and their dependents. We also include any retirees that are on our active medical plans as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is great and fantastic, and I so appreciate it that this is being offered for your employees. 100% support it, so thank you so much.
Any other questions? Thank you. So the proposed action in front of us today is the Metropolitan Council authorized the regional administrator to negotiate and execute contract 25P225 with Health Partners to provide on-site clinic administrative services for all eligible council employees, retirees, and dependents in the amount not to exceed $7,260. Oh, no, $7,260,000.
Healthcare costs are going down.
385. Can I get a motion here?
So moved. Second.
Okay.
Both made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. Now we have items under the information. So next we have 2 information items. And we'll start with the investment review, fourth quarter 2025 presentation. Invite Mark Thompson, Director of Treasury, to come up and present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. Yes, Mark Thompson, I'm the Treasury Director for the Council, and this is a quarterly review I present to this committee on our investment portfolios. And I've got about 9 slides. There's 4 or 5 on the economy, and then we'll touch base on The remaining slides will be on each of our 3 different portfolios, so. Hopefully you've seen this before and understand what I'm about to go through, but so a little bit about the economy. Uh-oh. Wrong button, there we go. A little bit about economic growth. This slide shows economic growth for the last 6 quarters as measured by GDP, and it's missing the 4th quarter, as you can see that the 4th quarter came out last Friday after this slide was produced, but it's been a difficult year to accurately know what GDP is, because if you remember back in the 1st quarter, there was front running of imports ahead of the tariff announcement, so that skewed the 1st quarter very low, and then the 2nd and 3rd quarters, the 2nd quarter was actually kind of a recovery from the 1st, and then 3rd quarter was more normal, I think, and then now the 4th quarter we're factoring in the government shutdown that happened in October and November. So the 4th quarter GDP came in at 1.4%, which was lower than expectations. Expectations were 2.5 to 3, or 2.5 to 2 3/4%. So it was quite a bit lower, mostly because of the lack of spending that was because of the shutdown in October and November. I can put my glasses on, sorry. A little bit more about that. According to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, who puts together this data, consumer spending, government spending, exports, and business capital investment, especially in AI, remains strong. We also saw, this is in the 4th quarter, we also saw a pickup in manufacturing. Most economists are optimistic for growth for solid growth in 26, factoring in tax cuts and possible more continued rate cuts from the Fed, which I'll touch on a little bit more, and stable inflation. Of course, on the flip side of that, there's potential pressures in 26 from geopolitical tensions and trade and immigration policy and continued high prices, are affecting a lot of families. AI fear has been something that's been disrupting the markets lately, and we've had a cooling labor market, which I'll touch on in a moment too. So a little bit about growth and kind of the data disruptions that we've talked about before, but continue and have gotten actually worse. So labor market has gotten a lot of focus in the 4th quarter, and this chart shows the jobs added by month for the past couple of years. But looking at the 4th quarter, you see some crazy numbers. October was way down. November and December were higher. You can see that the dotted line shows a 2-year trend in job growth, and that's obviously been decreasing for a long time. So it's kind of this is really the statistic that the Fed is watching, and one of the main reasons they cut rates 3 times in 25, twice in the 4th quarter. So you can see the declining average, like I said, in the dotted line, and primarily they were cutting rates based on the risks they saw in the labor market. They also look at inflation, but that's been more stable, and I'll show you that in a minute. But I don't know if you remember, we talked about some of the payroll data in last quarter, how that was very unreliable because of the collection issues that were going on, and that really happened again in the 4th quarter with the shutdown. So some of the data, in fact, a lot of the data was not even collected, and they do this by surveys, and half of the surveys didn't even occur in October. And I think for the whole quarter, about only a third of the data collection actually happened. So the data is really, you got to take it with a grain of salt, and we really need to have a few quarters of these anomalies not happening in the market, like the tariff announcements and the government shutdowns and these things that kind of skew the data. So hopefully in '26, we'll get some more normalized data that we can get a clearer picture, but clearly the trend in the job market has been down. As you can see, like I mentioned, that dotted line showing the decrease. In October, that really big low number there, and you can see it's blue, which means federal workers, and that isn't necessarily because of the shutdown, because those workers who were laid off or furloughed during the shutdown were still counted as employed, even though they didn't get paid for a while. But that's really comes from the DOGE cuts and those people that were getting paid for a while and their severance ran out in October and now they're being counted as unemployed. So you see a big decrease in federal employment in October. That's the reason for that dramatic line there. Now, to make it even more messy, the January numbers, which aren't on here, came out very strong. 130,000 jobs were added in January. So that kind of makes the market even harder to figure out after unreliable data in the fourth quarter and then a kind of change in direction in January. So, and that had the effect of, making the markets pause a little bit and say, is the job market as bad as we thought or isn't it? So kind of push back expectations for Fed rate cuts in '26. We're looking at rate cuts. The expectations are really from the Fed for one cut and possibly two in '26, but most likely occurring after the new Fed chair starts in May. I think his first meeting will be in July. So we're not looking for any more rate cuts till probably July at the earliest. And I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment too. Inflation has been pretty stable. The right chart shows monthly inflation numbers and the left shows kind of the trend lines for the last few years. For CPI, you can see that really the CPI has been kind of level for most of the year. It's come down a little bit in '25 versus '24, just a tiny bit, and it's really been kind of steady. And like I said, the Fed isn't really focused on this as much because they think it's still going to trend down to their 2% goal, even though it's slightly higher at this point, but it's really not their focus. And you can see it again on the monthly inflation numbers on the right chart. October's not even shown because they didn't even do data. So again, the data is pretty messy and hard to be relying on at this point. Treasury yield curve, I put this in here just to kind of show you how interest rates changed during the year and during the quarter. The green line is where we started the year as far as yields on treasuries. The dark blue at the bottom is where we finished the year, so you can see that rates dropped across the board from short-term all the way to long-term during the year. And the two blue lines are what happened in the fourth quarter. So that, again, we saw drops is not a lot in the fourth quarter, primarily on the short end. On the left side of the graph, you can see the Fed rate cuts, pushed down rates on the short end of the curve, and that's where we, invest our short-term portfolio. And as I show you that in a few minutes, you'll see how that's affecting our portfolio as we are investing at lower and lower yields. It's not helping that portfolio. So our longer term portfolio is more in the intermediate part of the curve. And that's managed differently, and that's actually improving. So I'll talk about that too. But the left chart there shows the Fed meetings that happened in 2025 and their target rate. You can see the rates decreased there in September, October, and November, and ended their target rate at 3.5 to 3.75. S&P 500, this shows it for the last year. You see the big dip in April when the tariff announcements came out, and it's been a kind of steady climb since. Now, the last couple months in '26, we've had a lot of AI turbulence in the stock market, and I think the stock market now is reacting more to AI than it is to some of the data, which is interesting. And you can see the returns there was 2.65 for the quarter and 17.86 for the year, which is still good. We have exposure to that market, the equity market in our OPEB trust, as you probably know, and 62% of the trust is in the stock market through an S&P 500 index pool, and that's managed over at the state board. And I'll show you more about the OPEB performance in a moment, but
Sure. Thanks, Mark. Before you go on to the next, could you just say a little bit more about how AI is impacting the market?
Sure. Well, AI, I think there's been a ton of investment talk about, AI capital investment is throwing out huge numbers, and they're building huge data centers for, big numbers, and that's driving the market, had been driving the market, and now I think that's changed where people are getting more concerned about, are they overspending? Is AI gonna be monetized as much as they thought? And it's kind of, market gotten overvalued in some of those tech stocks, so we've seen a big tech pullback in January and February. Now, actually today it kind of reversed a little bit, but that's been kind of the fear is, can we monetize? Is AI getting overblown, tech kind of a bubble, and is it gonna really come to fruition as much as the market thought?
Okay.
There's also some concerns about, that the S&P 500 is very tech heavy, and some of those tech stocks are, I don't wanna throw out names, but they're more software based, and there's been some fear late that AI is gonna eliminate a lot of need for software. So some of the software stocks have tanked over the past few weeks. So I think that's what I'm seeing in the market, so it's interesting. So it's getting to be certain tech stocks are still viable, and some are getting really hammered based on those AI fears.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Moving on to the portfolios. This is our short-term portfolio that's used for our cash management. This is investing our extra cash around our expenditures, and no real change here. You can see it's 1.62 billion, and that's at the end of the year. It's actually gotten a little bigger now because we settled some bond issues which go into this portfolio, but you can see that it's allocated out between treasury bills, government discount notes, and money market funds, same as it has been for quite some time. It's pretty straightforward investing in short-term securities, as I mentioned, that those yields I showed you on the yield curve that are coming down. But our allocation is really just decided on where we can get the best yield among those three different categories of investments. On the right is the total return. Fourth quarter was 0.97%, and versus a benchmark, we have a money market benchmark we measure performance against at a 103, so we're slightly underperformed the benchmark for the quarter. Our book yield, you can see, is 348 for the quarter versus 387 in the third quarter, so that's an effect of the Fed rates coming down, so the yields we're investing in are coming down. And it's same as our interest income came down from 18.1 to 16 million. And I'll show you the total year in a minute, which turned out very well, but you can see it's changing as the portfolio turns over with the new yields. The yield, I'll just say the yield on this portfolio or the return on this portfolio for the year was 4.25, 4.24 to be exact. Long-term portfolio, this is more of our reserves, set aside reserves that are invested differently. You can see the different securities it's invested in, it's longer term. Not a lot of change. You can see the green expanded a little bit in the fourth quarter. That's money market fund balance, just because we had some investments mature the last couple days of the year that weren't invested before year-end reporting was done. But generally, the allocation, there's been no change in our strategy here. The total return was 1.05 versus a benchmark again of just underperformed the benchmark a little bit, 1.09 for the quarter. Book yield on this one you can see is going up, and that is because this portfolio is longer term, and a lot of the securities in there we bought years ago in a zero interest rate environment, and now we're able to reinvest those at higher yields, which is great. So if the yield curve keeps steepening, hopefully that'll continue. We'll be able to grab some higher yields for this portfolio, but it's a little slower turnover, so it takes some time. But interest income is increasing. You can see 3.8 million versus 3.5 quarter before. In the duration, we're quite a bit short of our benchmark, but we're looking to continue to extend that as the short-term rates keep coming down. But so the yield on this one for the year was 5.07 for the year. Lastly is the OPEB portfolio. I mentioned this is managed over at the state board. We control the allocations to 3 different buckets. And you can see in the 5th bullet there, there's the 3 buckets we can invest in. There's an equity S&P 500 equity pool. We own some fixed income securities there, and also there's a cash pool. So we try to keep our equity exposure to 60% of the portfolio. It fluctuates obviously with the stock market, so we make occasional adjustments to try to keep it at 60. We're at 62 at the end of December. Performance, you can see at the top, fourth quarter was 2.31, which is lower than it has been for a quarter, but the year-to-date is still strong at 13.24, and you can see our historical averages are great. And the values went up about 32 million during the year. We started at 379 million, finished at 410. You can see the fourth quarter, the balance actually went down. That's because we made a withdrawal that was greater than our return of 2.31. So that's an annual withdrawal we make to refund the council for our OPEB expenses for the year. And that was, like I said, 13 million, a little over 13 million. But so yeah, it's still been a great performer. We're still fully funded on our liabilities of about 280 million. So still in great shape. The return for the year was great. This has been a really strong performer for us, and we're in a really good position with our liability funding. I think there's one more. This is just a quick snapshot of the earnings for our long and short-term portfolios, and this is the earnings that are allocated out to the divisions as part of their budget. So if all the divisions like to know how much they're gonna get, but it's a little hard to predict for them, but you can see we finished right at 80 million. It was just actually a tad under 80 million, but virtually the same as last year, which is kind of interesting. After an entire year of all these investing, we were $100,000 different between 24 and 25, which is crazy to be that close. But and you can see how it's changed since we were, back in the zero interest rate environment. We were barely making anything, and now we're making quite a bit more. So that's great. I think 26 will be slightly less. The short-term portfolio tends to dominate because it's much bigger, and the curve's been the short-term interest rates were actually higher than some of the intermediate rates for the past few years. So I think the long-term will continue to grow and the short-term will shrink. The overall will probably shrink a little bit too, but to give you an idea of what earnings we're getting. And that's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mark?
Keep doing the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, we have one last item on today's agenda, and that is a regional administrative strategic plan presentation. I'll hand it over to Phil and his team to make the presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. We first presented this RA strategic plan last year. You may recall, Committee Member Morales, you weren't here for this, but we talked about regional administration and shared services and our approach to providing the services throughout the divisions. And we spent quite a bit of time a couple years ago putting together a strategic plan that got to our mission, vision, values, a lot of facilitated discussions. Out of that strategic plan came 3 pillars that you might recall: workforce, technology, and governance. We gave you an update last year on that. It's been a lot of work in those 3 areas, so today we've got Cassandra, Sue, and Matt to talk a little bit about some of the work that's being done. And as we get into the next couple management committee meetings, we'll have other departments from RA presenting some of the other work that's done as well as a part of the strategic plan. So that's the reason you see we have the 3 pillars. That's why we have 3 different presentations, and I'll turn this over, I'm assuming, to workforce, which would be Cassandra going forward. So.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thank you so much for having me. I'm Cassandra Tabor. I'm the Chief Human Resources Officer, and as Phil mentioned, here to talk about a workforce update. So this presentation is very similar to one that I gave to you about 6 months ago, late last fall. And so I wanted to provide you an update on that, and then I'm happy to stand for any questions. So if you recall from last fall, we had moved into unified recruitment strategy. And typically, prior to this unified recruitment strategy, we were really doing on-demand recruiting. So as leaders who needed to fill positions came to us on demand, who had the most sense of urgency, we would fill those positions. So we've worked with Transit to develop a unified recruitment plan, as well as the rest of the divisions under a separate unified recruitment plan. And the purpose of this is to ensure that we are actually prioritizing our recruitment in alignment with the goals and things that need to be accomplished for the council. And those decisions are driven by our executive leadership versus those who are loudest win. So it's been a very organized approach. We've been able to move in a more efficient manner through that, and our leaders and those who are in hiring positions are able to better determine when they're likely to see staffing coming on board. And this also has allowed our talent acquisition specialists, which we've staffed up by the support of the council over the last 2 years, to really focus on the actual recruiting work and let our leaders drive the purpose behind this. So we're 1 year into the other divisions, community development, environmental services, RA, and MTS, into their unified recruitment strategy, and we're 2 years into Transit's unified recruitment strategy. So a much more organized approach.
Chair? Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Cassandra, for this, and congratulations on this work. It's exciting to see. I know this committee has been interested in seeing this sort of more strategic approach to recruitment. And I just have a question about the 3rd bullet.
Yes.
Under outcomes, and just the choice of vocabulary there, that they're actually spending time in recruiting. So in the past, were they spending time doing something else?
Yes, I think when recruitment is done on demand based on people's ability to individually create urgency, they were spending a lot of time on the phone with leaders trying to determine themselves who should be recruited for next. Now, instead of fielding that from leaders at all levels, that goes through the unified recruitment plan leaders, and then our talent acquisition specialists take direction in an organized manner so that they are doing the recruiting instead of spending time managing emotions and needs on the phone.
Well, persuasion. Thank you. That's helpful.
You caught my strategic language.
I was reading between the lines.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Additional recruitment efforts that I just wanted to highlight that have changed since we met last time. We've done some really focused work with our Metro Transit police partners. Chief Dotseth has been a fantastic partner. We are well into our community service officer programming. This has been huge. We now have more community service officers than we have ever had. And this has been multifold. One, working really closely with those who assist with recruiting on our PD team. But second to that, with our community service officer programming, it's creating our own pipeline. It's our ability to take folks who have interest in this field off the streets, who we think will be successful in this, put them through programming so that they're understanding what it is they're walking into, and then ultimately will hopefully be a large feeder for our officer program as well. Our officer growth has been really significant as well. We have a dedicated recruiter that we've done as a trial this last year with Chief Dodseth. It's been very successful. It's been focused recruitment. We're seeing a lot more lateral movement, so officers choosing to come here from other departments, where that most recently historically has been the opposite, which is good. That says a lot about the culture and what they're hearing about the Metro Transit Police when they're out and about in their field. So we're really excited about this. We're excited about where our CSO programming has gone. We've handed that over to Transit. We were leading that for them, and with partnership with them, we've handed that to them, and they're doing a great job picking it up and running, and we'll continue to be a support for that.
Chair, on that, please,
Yes,
thanks, sorry to keep
please.
interrupting your point, but so do we have historical data that shows the relationship between, say, the robustness of the CSO program and the number of officers? Is there a relationship there, or do we just not know that?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, historically, I'm not sure what programming we really had in the past that we can compare it to, but we do know in the policing industry, the more robust your community service officer program is in general, the more likely you are to have folks who travel up into the officer.
Great, so this is establishing some good baseline.
Yes, and for those of you who might not be familiar with this, the policing applicant pool has been low in these last chunk of years, and so I think we're probably 4 years from the report now, but about 4 years ago, as we were leading in on the outside of COVID, we were graduating less than one officer from the post-board program per department in the state. And so we were really competing. We're competing very heavily. So those lateral movements are really important, and then growing our own pool is really important.
Thank you, thanks, Chair.
And then we've also made some changes with our workforce development team and where they're offering their focus. They've been working with our information services and the rest of the council. Initially, our workforce development was done just to support transit. We've really expanded what they're focused on. So with our IS team, really focusing on their high needs and building them a pipeline as well. As was mentioned in the previous presentation, the employment market is tricky right now. And so we're developing a network training technician program in partnership with IS to really try to build up their pipeline as well, as they historically have quite a few openings in their department, and we need to make sure there are ladders in for folks on the street to come in and grow their way through the council as well. If you recall, last year we took a break from our internship programming. We completely revamped that. That is now year-round internship programming. It was primarily just for summers, and we had some extended interns. We have now designed this so it's very specific to the departmental needs of every department, instead of having a generic program that we try to insert into the departments. So we work one-on-one with the managers for those areas to determine what their needs are and to make sure that we're designing internship that works for them. The other thing that we saw was a big opportunity is we had interns who were meeting our needs. We weren't so convinced that we were necessarily meeting their needs, especially those who are in schools that have requirements for internships. And so now we have very robust programming that tie them into the culture of the organization, that give them opportunities multiple times a week to choose from for professional development opportunities, and help us when there are opportunities for folks to grow from internship into full-time positions, that there are pathways. And then sometimes that isn't what the need is for the intern or for the department, so making sure that we're tailoring that programming to what the actual need is. We continue with our pathway programming, which has been going on for many years now. Our bus technician apprenticeship program continues to be successful. And then we just worked this last year at the end of the year with MTS, TransDev, which is a third party that provides resources to drive the buses for MTS, was really struggling, just like we are, for mechanics in some of those technical positions. We're actually able to work with them as a third party to help them develop programming so that they're able to feed that, because if they're successful, we're successful. So just that bigger picture investment. And then I wanted to just give you a quick peek. These 2 slides were presented at the Transportation Committee just a couple of days ago. So if you've seen them before, it won't be a surprise for you. This just gives you an idea of where we're at from a hiring standpoint, a recruitment standpoint, and then how many bus operators we're seating. Again, looking at our 2026 outlook. A couple of things to highlight here. You'll see we have areas of opportunity for retention. We know that once our bus operators have been with us for a year, they stay long-term. So the focus with our MT partners has really been, again, looking at our assisting with anything we can do to help support retention. They've made really good strides, Transit has. They'll continue to work on that. You can see the volume of applicants that we bring in versus those who remain seated is really where that delta is that we're needing to focus on. Our talent management team is doing some really strategic work because the market is soft right now, especially for operators, as we've dealt with the external forces that are happening in our community right now. 85% of our drivers are folks of color, and so we've seen a very significant decrease in the number of applicants that we are getting for operators, and so we're continuing to monitor that. With that being said, we have pools of folks who have come through programming before, applicant programming before, where we know that we have the opportunity to look back and see if we can catch some of those opportunities that we didn't have in the past. We're being as strategic as possible, trying to get our numbers up as high as we can so that as they continue to build retention, we're able to successfully seat enough drivers to do the work that we have in the council. So this just goes through the total hires and net hires for 2024 and 2025, where our target range are. So you can see we're sitting in a good space, but there's a lot of growth happening at Transit, so we want to make sure that we don't lose that momentum. And then with train operators, Transit has positively said recently that they're feeling good about the direction that we're going with train operators as we look to have a flawless launch of the Green Line. That's important for us to support that. And so their feeling is that we're moving in the right direction. The numbers that we're bringing in, those that we're retaining, that's a good place for us to be. So we will continue to do the work to support our train operators as well. And then some additional work, once we have our employees here on staff, retention is a big piece of this. And so one of the things that we brought forward with this classification audit, I won't go through this in detail. You saw this for those of you who were here at the end of last year, but I wanted to give you an update as to where we are. So this week, tomorrow, we will be bringing with our third party, Korn Ferry, some information about the audit that has now been essentially completed. We'll look for final direction from the cabinet, and then we're looking to bring recommendations for adjustments to our classification work at the end of March. So we're excited about this. For those of you who recall, this is not something that the organization has maintained as well as it could have over the years. And so making sure that we remain competitive, that people are attracted to the work that's here, this classification audit is really important for that. And then an update with bargaining. This is similar to what you saw at the end of last year because we were predicting our work forward. I'm really excited to let you know that we are ahead of any schedule that we've been on for the most recent past. ATU bargaining has begun. ATU and our staff have reported that they're very excited to be meeting this early. So we had some bargaining meetings in February. We've got them scheduled in March. One of the things that we heard from the organization was making sure that we were seeking feedback from the different divisions and departments about what they were needing in the contracts, hurdles that they saw that impacted staff or impacted our ability to do the work, making those adjustments. And so we created a robust feedback cycle so that we're able to solicit that input and better align our contracts with the needs of our employees and the needs of the organization. So we've got ATU that we're meeting with now. We've got non-ATU, that's happening as well. So that will be happening shortly. So we're doing the front end work for that now. So we are ahead of where we've been for all of our contracts this cycle. So we're very excited. We have a lot of enthusiasm from our unions to have contracts settled before they expire. And so we've got some lofty goals. And then I just wanted to provide a couple of key updates from Human Resources for 2025. We had a really robust strategic plan. We completed 98.6% of our plan, which is exciting. So a couple of successes I wanted to share with you. When it comes to labor relations and management development, this has been really important to the organizations. Supervisors and managers really needing stronger labor relations skills, expressing a desire to have a better understanding of how to work with our labor folks. And so we delivered labor relations focused manager trainings to 6 cohorts this last year. That structure has now been built and we're able to do that in years going forward. So we'll continue to provide that training regularly as we move through the rest of the council and the rest of the year. Leaders needed to support effectively delivering, managing, and closing out performance improvement plans. This was something where we have an opportunity as an organization to ensure that everyone is getting a performance improvement plan, a performance evaluation every year, and that we have the ability to do performance improvement plans in a way that's confident and helps build up the employee. So Human Resources, our business partners, delivered a toolkit for our managers, including FAQs, talking points, in-the-moment guidance, and add-on resources so they feel confident in managing performance as we continue to move forward. We heard this in our culture survey, not only from our leaders wanting this, but our employees feeling like our leaders needed more of these skills. So this is about our people development. And then we had a lot going on with leave programming and systems this last year. So as you're well aware, I'm sure January 1 this year, we had to be ready to launch Minnesota Paid Leave. This supports the employees' ongoing experience here. We were able to launch that successfully with partnerships across the organization and with the state. So we just started getting reporting and the use of that leave. We don't have a lot of information here this first quarter, but we'll have more as we go, just to see how folks are using it. I know there was a report that came out from the state a day or two ago where family leave was number 1, the higher usage over individual leave. And then the cabinet asked that our Perform system, which is where we do our performance evaluations, be updated to reflect the Met Council's culture values. That's the input that our employees have had through the survey every single year. So we were able to get that updated and aligning with the 3 values. This was big because we've also heard from managers and employees that there was a lot of redundancy and the process took so long that the quality of the process really suffered. So this allowed us to be a lot more efficient and effective and reduce redundancy as we moved through. And then the other piece that we've talked about here is we struggled with our ability to tell the story of our hiring process. We had not been collecting data in a way that allowed us to understand what was going well, where our opportunities were in the process, so that people could feel like as they were applying for positions here that it was a good experience to come through, and then we could effectively and efficiently get folks into seats here. We built out a new system in the way that we collect data starting January 1st, we have the ability now to track all of that data so that we're able to see what our story is and accurately speak to that when we talk to candidates. But also it's going to allow us to have more strategic hiring work and it'll inform more strategic hiring goals as well for our hiring managers as we move forward. So a lot of efficiencies in our systems we're continuing to build as we wrap to 2025.
Chair? So I guess I'm a chatty committee
Yeah.
member. Sorry. But I have a question about
Yeah.
the Minnesota paid leave, and I know
Yeah.
it's so recent that we don't have robust meaningful data yet, but
Yeah.
we went through this similar exercise in the small nonprofit that I lead, and we had very generous leave and PTO policies in place already, so a lot of what we needed to do was just to make sure that there was alignment between what was in state statute and in our policies. And so my question is, and I don't need a lot of detail or anything, but I just wonder how far off were we as the Met Council? How much actual reform did we need to do within our paid leave?
Yeah.
Or, yeah, what that
Yeah,
looked
I'll
like.
look back at Cherry, but I think the reform itself was fairly minor. We have very organized systems and processes for other forms of leave. I think where our biggest opportunity was, and a lot of it has to do with the reporting that comes out of the state and not knowing exactly what that was going to look like, but ensuring that payroll could accurately support the differences between leave that they were using here in combination, as well as Minnesota paid leave. And I think the other piece that was really important to us was streamlining our leave process in general, so that folks, as they were applying for or expressing a need to us, didn't have to know exactly what leave they needed. They just needed to tell us what their needs were, and then we could give them the right kind of direction. And so fine-tuning that was really an opportunity for us.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you so much. On your third bullet, for measuring the hiring
Yeah.
process, and it's kind of hits the first part of it is, hiring process from the external can be horrible, and we really wanna be we wanna be the employer of choice. And we have very specific needs in ES and other divisions for skilled labor force with some very specific skills that people are not going back to school to get, so we're doing a lot of entry but mid-level, senior level hires. So I'd be interested in, as you track this, to really see how we're doing. Are we missing applicants? Are we, not sending emails back saying the job is closed? Are we saying if people are not right for the job, just tell them so they can move on, and then, is the process nimble enough that if there is a person in a job and it looks like that person has lots of other offers, can we bring them in sooner? So the nimbleness and the process and making sure that our reputation as being the employer of choice is out there, and really number one, that if there's an environmental service person or engineer or something and there's a need, I know there's a lot of, a couple ads open for jobs that are very specific. Really, I've pushed them out and I've called people. We really want to be the employer of choice. So I'd be interested in 6 months to come back and say, we're getting back to people, we're not getting back, and continued process improvement on that.
Mr. Chair, committee members, thank you for that, and I'm in agreement. I think that is really important that we're able to, from the point at which an additional position is approved in the budget through when we're seating people on day one, that we're able to tell the story of what those timelines look like, what the efficiencies are, where our hurdles are. So we're happy to bring that back as we have that information going forward. The other thing I would highlight here that was really important this year too was really taking a look at our ability when we brought in folks for train operator positions or other things who maybe were not ideally the best fit by the end of probationary period, making sure that we had faster pathways for them, speaking of nimble, for them, if that wasn't a good fit, to get them into something else, or if they didn't pass their CDL, to get them into something else that they were qualified for and where we had openings so we could fill some of those other needs. It's a new program. We're working through the kinks of that. It's by no means perfect, but it's definitely moving us in a better direction of using the candidates we have more effectively and efficiently, and providing employment for folks who want to be employed by the Met Council.
Thank you.
Councilman Jenkins?
Thank you, Chair. I know we're talking about bringing people on, but I had the fortune, I sort of forced myself on your LOD team today and met with Sherilyn Sushko and her team as a full trainer myself. But I wanted to say, as a newer member, we got Metro Transit events and all of that stuff. And what amazes me, and if people outside of the organization don't see it, I wanna call it out. Metro Transit just celebrated an employee's 40 years with the company. 20, 30 years is not unusual to see here, but it's extremely unusual to see outside of these walls. And I think that says a ton about the Metropolitan Council and Metro Transit as an employer and as a place to, bring your passion and work. So just nothing but praise for you, your LOD team, and if we can bring in more people, they'll get to have the same experience that a lot of our folks do. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions here? Go ahead.
Okay, good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Sue Hauge, I'm the Deputy CIO. Our CIO, Gretchen White, could not be here today, but we wanted to make sure we got in your hands our first ever IS annual report. She's been here 2 years now, so you'll see this year after year. There's information in there, it's also online. And I'm gonna talk a little bit today about some of the things that are in here, but if you want more information, it is here for you. So this is our at-a-glance slide.
Bingo.
So
As long as
Bingo
there's
card
not a-
slash.
As long as there's not a
Yeah.
test.
Our services slide. So this just gives you an idea of some of the many services that we provide for the entire council. And we have 149 people who serve over 4,800 people here at the council. And you can see this just gives you some statistics around like the volume and the complexity of the number of different things that we have to support. But the bottom line is, if our technology stopped for a single day, much of the work of the council would stop with it. This is critical. So I'm going to talk a little bit first about our workforce. And what we've been focusing on our workforce is 3 things: adding new staff, providing training for our current staff, and using staff augmentation to fill where we need to. So we're accomplishing this by, in 2025, we're able to have allocated 21 new positions, and we are in the process of filling those positions, including key leadership roles, which I will talk about in the next slide. And one very large project that we completed last year is a classification review. So we worked in partnership with HR, and we have not updated our classifications since 2010. And so we rewrote all of the job classifications, and so now we have all up-to-date, more modern titles that reflect better the market. And we also added some entry-level positions where we didn't have, we added some higher-level positions we didn't have, and some leadership positions. So now we're in a much better spot than we were before, for hiring and classifying. And Cassandra talked a little bit about our network technician trainee program, but we're really, really excited about that because we want to continue to do these kind of things as we are trying to focus on hiring our hard-to-fill positions. And a network technician is one of those positions. And so we've worked with developing a curriculum with Hennepin Technical College, and it's a real cool program because it is a 2-year program. And so the students, there'll be 3 of them that we will fund, so they will go to class for 2 years, but they will also work here part-time for 2 years. And at the end, when they get their associates, they'll get an actual degree. They will have a job here, and it will be an entry-level network technician program, which we put together last year through our classification. So very excited about this, and it's the first class is starting in March. So we're excited.
Sure, yeah, I think that's really exciting. And so is that training program, is that in-house or do we use outside partners to do that?
We use Hennepin County Technical College, so they're the ones who will actually give the training and the students will actually go to that college.
Great, thank you, thanks. And sorry if I missed it, I said that. Thank you.
We're excited about that. The other thing we're doing is we use staff augmentation or contractors to help us when we still have vacancies to fill, but we also use staff augmentation for skill sets that we don't have, and if we need to fill some gaps, we bring some people in to help us with that. The other thing that we're focusing on is trying to improve our team culture. And we've done that last year, and we're gonna do that this year we call them our coffee chats. So what we did is we had many meetings at Caribou locations around the Twin City area. We had people, no matter where they lived around the Twin City area, come and talk to us. And it just fosters a lot more collaboration, communication, and we can have real, true, sort of authentic conversations. And so it's just really trying to put a focus on building a great culture, want to be an employer of choice, and a great culture, place to come. So this is a little bit about our the leadership build out. So we're adding a couple new positions, a director of a business office, which will oversee our procurement, our finance functions, and our asset management function. But to the left, we are hiring an additional deputy CIO. But this DCIO will focus on our operations, our infrastructure network, kind of our day-to-day, keeping the lights on, what we need to do every day. And so this is a structure that we're looking to hopefully at the end look like. And then around the technology. So I want to talk a little bit about cybersecurity. So in 2025, we continue to see an escalation in targeted attacks from nation state and sophisticated threat actor organizations. So to combat this, we focused on strengthening our security posture and our email security controls. We introduced web application firewalls for all the council's websites, but we really did a lot of focus around security awareness and training. We enhanced our phishing simulation program in 2025. So each user receives 12 customized phishing simulations annually, and the campaigns are tailored to reflect real world scenarios and attack patterns. And so we've been doing this for 2 years now. And so each year, because we started the beginning of 2 years ago, and we saw our successful phishing simulation rates decrease 3.3% each year, meaning you get an email comes into your inbox and we want people to recognize that this is a phishing email. And so then there's a little button that they push for phishing, and then it, hopefully it says, hey, congratulations, you passed. And that's been really successful. We also have mandatory security awareness training for people. We held council-wide training sessions during Security Awareness Month. And this month alone, we have hosted 2 training sessions on personal security related to tax season. And we've had over 1,000 people attend these sessions. And when I say over 1,000 people, I'm not talking about the mandatory classes. I'm talking about the people that just want to hear about security, because it's so important, and we deal with this every day in our personal lives. And then around technology, we focus a lot around modernization. And we focused on modernizing our network infrastructure, including some phone upgrades, our mobile stack enhancements. We have last year refreshed over 1,300 laptops. We've got everyone to Windows 11, the latest version. So we've been doing a lot of keeping up to date. And then on the software side of the world, we began a launch of a new grants management system last year. So we gathered stakeholder requirements. We went out and purchased a new tool. It's called Flux. And so this will help us manage our grants. And this is both incoming and outgoing grants. And so that will be rolled out during this year. We did a lot of work in our GIS area regarding enhancements to support planning and operations with more accurate mapping and spatial data services. And then for 2026, we continue to update critical systems such as our fare collection system, Cubic, our bus scheduling system, Hastis, and our asset management system. Now, these major systems are really critical to the operations, and they are very large technology, and it takes a lot of people to implement them. And then lastly, around governance. So we have a technology oversight committee, which began in 2024. So Gretchen chairs that, and there's appointed representation from assistant general managers across from each division. And they met quarterly last year, and they reviewed major technology initiatives and established operating models. And then we continue to mature our project management office, and last year we launched what we're calling a leadership action board. And this is basically a dashboard with all the different projects that are in process. So you can search by a particular division, you can drill down on a project and see where it's at, and it just gives transparency on our work. And last year we completed 23 projects, such as, getting Imagine 2050 out there, the local planning handbook, and other council-wide and division-specific projects were completed. Now, artificial intelligence. So we are at, I would say, the beginning of our artificial intelligence journey. And so the governance of AI was established, and we call it the TOC, Technology Oversight Committee. And right now, as far as AI, we have 2 teams, and one is a community of practice. And what they do is they act as a collaborative forum discussing business needs and best practices around AI, and they meet monthly. And then we have an AI strategy team, which develops and recommends AI strategy for TOC to review. So right now, what they're doing is there's a small group of pilot users who are looking at Microsoft's Copilot. So they'll test it out, and they will eventually bring a recommendation to TOC for how we want to use Copilot at the council, the costs, what that's going to look like, and things like that. And then lastly, under ERP, or Enterprise Resource Planning Strategy, we facilitated the development of an ERP strategy last year in partnership with Gardner. And Gardner is a research and advisory firm focused on business and technology. We completed a business capability modeling exercise from people across the council, and we looked at our ERP. And when I talk about ERP, I'm talking about our finance, procurement, HR, and asset management systems. And we just didn't look at them in a vacuum. We really try to look outward where we want to be 5 to 10 years from now, instead of approaching this like a break fix kind of a thing. So we now have a high-level roadmap of how we're going to transform our ERP systems over the next 5 to 10 years. This roadmap includes a governance model for decision-making throughout the life of the transformation, which we are in the process right now of putting into place. So that is what we are doing around governance.
Sure. Yeah, thanks. I appreciate this so much. This is all really interesting and exciting. And I have a question. It really came into my mind during when we were talking about the Leadership Action Board, but I guess it relates a little to the ERP as well. And so there's a lot of rich data there, right? And it's useful internally, but I'm just wondering if in either of those pieces, if there's a public-facing component, if public is looking for some of this data, like where we are on project manage, on a project through management, or is this all just internal?
Right now, the focus is internal.
Sure.
Now, if you think about your ERP systems, the data that's contained in them, we use for, for outward-facing information. But right now, the focus is internal.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Councilor Jenkins.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So I'm gonna dovetail off of, the prior question. For external, in our committee, end of last year, we're only in February, so that's pretty easy. End of last year, we had approved us to purchase Granicus for our external data-facing materials. What are we looking at for a timeline before we'll start to see that hit? Where, to be honest, we have a lot of good data, but it's pretty hard to find sometimes.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Council Member. I can find out more information on the Granicus project. I know we're just kicking that off, so I don't have a timeline right now.
Is that your?
Unless me knows more about that, but I can get back to you on that.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, council members, we are right now in our configuration stage, meaning we're talking with the project team on configuring what that system should do and what it should look like for our standing committees. So we're really focusing on 6 committees, so the 4 standing committees and the council and committee of the whole first. Those are priority committees or meeting bodies we want to start with. So we'll be wrapping up that this month, and then next month we'll be working with the training team. So right now it's just me and the recording secretaries working with the project team, just trying to get the behind the scenes work to flow the way we want before we roll out any trainings and we launch it. So I would say expect 2 more months of us doing those behind the scenes work before we launch and reach out with additional updates and trainings for our staff and council members.
Councilor Seaver.
And I'd like to touch on the artificial intelligence governance. So you can come back at a later time and maybe talk more about that, but to me, it sounds like you're doing internal kind of a rollout and seeing what best practices are, but there's surprised you don't have like a contractor to really help with that and speed things along. And the other thing is I think it's really tied into also risk management, given the AI and the quality of what you can. Nothing bugs me more than when I get the meeting notes and an AI generated and you look at it and it's junk. So I mean, so how this is rolled out, how it's going to be used, the guidelines, the guardrails, but it also ends up, I think, tying into risk management as well. So in 6 months, we can hear more about that, but I think it's going to be important.
Mr. Chair, council member, one thing I do want to say is we are attending a lot of classes, information, and looking at, help to bring in. This is something that we're definitely not going to do on our own. The other thing is starting to look at, right now we have it's a standard and a security policy, as I'm looking at Matt. It'll be, we'll have to look at from a policy procedure,
Right.
What kind of policies and procedures do we have to put in place? We are getting help with that. I just want you to know that.
And we'll hear more about it.
Yes.
We're gonna have to start,
I know.
I hate to cut you short, Matt, but we gotta hit this next meeting in about 20 minutes here.
I'm gonna do a rapid fire presentation. So thanks for having me. I think this is a good transition actually to what I'm gonna talk about, and I think the questions you're asking are right on the money in terms of what we're thinking about. So I'll go through this really quickly, and there'll be time for more questions, and I can come back if there's ever interest in talking more about the new department. So this is I'll just go through this really fast. This is the governance pillar of the RA strategic plan. So you can see what was laid out 2 years ago now in terms of what we're thinking about, and there's been progress. I mean, Sue just talked about the talk. There are other, the forum, which is a cross-divisional group that is just kind of getting started in terms of what it's thinking about and coordinating efforts around government decision-making. Ryan's organized around the cabinet, Regional Administrator O'Connor. And there are other things we're thinking about within regional administration to help operationalize our decision-making pathways. And what I'm going to talk about for the rest of my presentation is one component of this, which is a realignment under a risk and compliance function that is intended to really put some of the building blocks of good governance in place. It's not all of governance, but it is a way of organizing and putting some more discipline around some of the areas that we've already been doing. So the 5 areas that I'm focused on in this new department, risk and compliance, are policies and procedures, internal controls, enterprise risk management, ethics, complaints and investigations, and business continuity. Now, all of these exist in some form at the council already, so these aren't new spaces necessarily, but I think as I'll talk through, we're looking at kind of expanding and putting more depth and more resources around these areas to make them more operational. Just quickly, the department is growing. We have people, including myself and a few other staff from the audit department that are kind of the beginnings of the foundation of the department. We brought over enterprise risk management, business continuity staff, Kathy and Lisa, and then the investigations and resolution unit from OEEO has now reports up through me in an effort to try to get a consistent process around investigations. We're looking at existing resources in the budget to build out some new staff members. I think there's also looking at other departments within RA. General counsel is going to hire somebody to focus on policies and procedures and investigations. Communications has dedicated that they will spend some key resources to help with the rollout of policies, procedures, and other things.
good to hear that IS is looking at a dedicated director for standards, which is a key component of putting more framework around our process. Thinking about additional staff to help supplement in these areas to do some of the hard work. As I'll close with, I'll sort of give you the ending first. I think all of these areas are really interconnected, and I think the value of putting all of these functions under one roof is to create those connections between the pieces, the internal controls, risk management, and the divisions. So that's really what I'm looking at, additional resources to try to draw those connections and make, so we're building in redundancy, but also thinking about how to connect the dots. We also have just some third-party resources. We're looking at bringing in a third party to do a consultation and complaints and investigation. So look at what we've done in the past and make some recommendations about how we can make the process better going forward. Protiviti has been documenting our internal controls starting in finance. We're looking at continuing that work this year. We've been working with Aon for a couple of years now on the enterprise risk. We expect within the next few months to have all of our risk register completed with all of the 5 divisions. Expect to be rolling that out and some good detailed information. FH Black is a consultant that's working with, starting actually in my role in audit, to develop, it's an audit software that we're using for our processes, but there's also an internal controls module, there's also an enterprise risk module, and there's potential for buying a policy and procedures module. They'll help organize around those areas and help connect those dots in the system. And then we always, of course, use investigative services on the outside when we need that. So getting just through each of the pillars, and I'll speak to these each very briefly. The first one, policy procedure, and one of the things I want to make sure is clear with this group is we're really connected to this culture driver of clarity. I think it's a really important piece of ensuring that employees, our board, the outside public understands that we have processes in place and really what our rules are and our rules of engagement, and finding better ways to both get those approved and communicate our policy and procedures. One of the stats that I like to cite, my audit team actually put together an analysis of policies and procedures, and we found 50% of those existing, of the 160 I think we have a person's name on it that doesn't work here anymore. It's just an indicator that it's not necessarily say they're bad policies or bad procedures, but it just tells you that we're not keeping up to date. So that's really what I'm focused on in terms of getting a better process and making sure that we're getting attention to maintain our policies, procedures, and standards and other things. Business continuity, I think we have a really good base framework for business continuity at the council. We practiced this during the pandemic with great success, and in many other cases. What that team, as I've started to work with that team in terms of what they need, it's additional resources to think about practicing our business continuity strategies outside of crisis, right? So doing tabletop exercises, reaching out to departments, making sure that the contact information, all the things that underlie our business continuity are up to date, including, Sue kind of alluded to technology and making sure that we have all of that identified. Not every system can be up and running. We have to have some prioritized way of what are the most critical things we have to do in an actual crisis. So doing more of that work and practicing more. Enterprise risk management, I talked about the Aon work. For me, this is really, I think an enterprise risk management framework is a really important way of analyzing risk and helping enable better decision making. The thing that I'm really committed to is making sure that this framework is connected to other things. So mapping internal controls, for example, to key risks. So if you ask the question, how are we managing this risk, we can go down and look at our fraud controls, for example. So how are we managing fraud? And having those links identified clearly within a system. There's also a lot of work in our divisions. The Metro Transit Safety Team is doing, has an SMS system. We're going to be meeting with them to figure out how we can connect their data to ours. Environmental Services already has a lot of robust risk management processes. So trying to think about how we can leverage all of the good work that's already going on in our S team to make the enterprise risk management a very usable, user-friendly, and valuable tool in terms of decision-making. Internal controls, this was really, I think, we have internal controls, we do, but they're sometimes inconsistently documented. It's unclear where we save the information, who's doing the work. So really what this is trying to, put a better framework around this, communicate better, have better, clearer documentation. And I think this will really help. The feedback we've gotten initially on our project with Protivity is that some people have just said, this is the first time I've ever seen my whole job laid out for me, which is just, it makes their job easier because they actually understand what it is they're doing, why they're doing it, and it's, their supervisors understand, everyone understands, so. And then complaints and investigations, we're really going through an evaluation process of what we have right now, and thinking about ways to better communicate, create a better system for investigations, reduce our risk just in terms of having all the processes aligned and documented, so we're making, the best decisions and also having all the documentation to support decisions that we're making. So I really think about putting a program around work that I think has existed just in silos in the past, so. The last slide is just that they all kind of connect. So it's really think of this as a holistic framework and not as 5 individual pillars, but all pieces that support good governance and council. So with that, I did it 10 minutes.
There you go.
Take any questions you
So
have.
many questions? I know there's a lot of thoughts on it. There's
Maybe
probably
come back in 6
questions, you
months
make a
with
list,
come
I hate
back
to cut
and
you
just
short, but it's
Fill
timing's
fill
here.
in some more things for us, I think it'd be lovely.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, and
Yeah.
it's really important work, and I think engaging with council members on this work is really important, so.
I tell people that there's AI and then what I used was KIDS. I still have my kids doing it all.
Sure, just, and I agree, it would be nice to see this, all of this actually, as we go forward with such interesting pieces here. And I'm especially interested, not right now, I don't need an answer, but in what the laying out, you said employees see their jobs laid out clearly for the person. I'd be really interested in seeing what that actually looks like.
Yeah.
So I know we have complexity here in the organization, so what that kind of, I don't know if it's a linear or what it looks like, but what's satisfying staff, employees here to see.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, it's certainly something we can do. I know the team doing internal controls I'm planning to bring, I'm kind of in dual role right now as Chief Risk and Compliance Officer, Chief Audit Executive until we backfill. In the audit committee, we're gonna be bringing that group to the audit committee to talk a little bit about what they've done. Because it really is a little bit audity, I mean, they're going to
Sure.
control gaps, but it would be a good opportunity, and we can share with this group too, what they're producing in terms of how they're laying out that work.
Cool.
Narratives.
Be interested, thanks, thank you.
All right, thank you. And, I think that ends our meeting today, so I'd like to adjourn the meeting and we can proceed on to the council meeting.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
That's good.
That's really great work.